Rachel Reeves's autumn budget has ignited a political firestorm, and the fallout reached a boiling point during her defence at the CBI conference. Her attempts to reassure business leaders that Labour's policies would foster growth and stability met fierce opposition, not just from the crowd, but from commentators who accuse her of deliberately misleading the nation. The most scathing attack came from pollster Matt Goodwin during a fiery appearance on GB News, where he accused Reeves of gaslighting the country.
We have now drawn a line under the inheritance that I faced. Public finances are now on a firm footing, and also our public services are funded in a proper way. And we've now set the envelope for those public services for the rest of this Parliament, which means we're not going to have to come back for more.
You see, the million-dollar question here, so she's saying there categorically we're not going to come back for more. Dave, he's in Redditch, he's got in touch and said, Michelle, you're all going off on tangents here because the argument currently right now is about this government, in his mind, was elected under a set of lies. They told us stuff, got elected, and what they said wasn't true. And this is one of the challenges when Rachel Reeves says to business, we won't be coming back a second time, is whether or not she will be believed a second time.
Yeah, well, I think there is a trust problem with the Labour government. Even Paul Johnson, the head of the Institute for Fiscal Studies, has been pretty vocal in saying essentially Labour misled the country ahead of the election. Firstly, in terms of the manifesto promises it made, saying it won't raise taxes, and obviously we saw the NI employer tax increases, but also knowing full well before it came into power about the so-called 22 billion black hole. Labour knew about that. They had meetings with the Treasury, so she's gaslighting the country by claiming otherwise. But the big story today from this conference for me is, you know, Michelle, businesses saying they no longer feel confident in investing in UK PLC. And you don't have to be a genius to figure out why. We've got a big state, we've got big regulation, we've got big tax, especially for business. We've got higher corporation tax rates in this country than the average across Europe.
Goodwin's tirade began with an indictment of Labour's promises, which he claims were a smokescreen for fiscal recklessness. There's a trust problem with this Labour government, Goodwin began, his tone brimming with incredulity. Reeves promised no tax hikes before the election. Remember that? Yet here we are, with higher employer national insurance rates and a tax system that's strangling businesses. And let's not forget the £22 billion black hole Labour knew about before taking office. They had discussions with the Treasury about it, but acted as if it didn't exist. She is gaslighting the country by pretending otherwise. The conference itself was a microcosm of the wider dissatisfaction brewing within the business community. Reeves doubled down on her decisions, portraying the budget as a necessary corrective to years of Tory mismanagement. I faced a problem, and I faced into it, she declared confidently. But her assurances fell flat. Critics have pounced on what they see as Labour's contradictory approach, promising economic growth while introducing policies that undermine the very foundation for such growth. Rupert Soames, chairman of the CBI, didn't mince words in his response to Reeves. Addressing her directly, he said, "Business has been milked as the cash cow in this budget. On the one hand, you talk about getting people back to work, but on the other, you make employing young, part-time or low-paid workers more expensive. This is not a growth strategy, it's a survival strategy." Goodwin wasn't done, calling out Reeves's lack of foresight. "We have one of the highest corporation tax rates among advanced economies," he said. "Businesses see this and think, why bother investing in the UK? The result is obvious. We're seeing plummeting confidence in UK PLC. Even Labour's own figures suggest a paltry 1.5% growth rate, barely enough to sustain the economy, let alone revive it." Goodwin then shifted to an issue he called the elephant in the room: immigration. "We have a broken model of mass immigration, low-wage, low-skill workers flooding into the economy from outside Europe. They're taking more out than they're putting in, and Labour's solution is nothing. Reeves has no plan to address this structural imbalance, which is dragging growth down even further." As the fallout from the conference spread, Labour's defenders scrambled to mount a counter-offensive. Political commentator Jonathan Liss hit back at Goodwin's claims, arguing that the budget was born of necessity, not ideology. "Look, no government has a magic bullet for economic recovery," Liss said during a heated exchange on GB News. "Every decision involves trade-offs. If Reeves hadn't acted, public services would still be in disarray. Schools, hospitals, transport, all of it was on the brink of collapse. but even Leese had to concede that Labour's messaging had been clumsy. If there's one criticism I agree with, it's that Labour hasn't articulated its vision clearly. Businesses need clarity. If we want them to invest, we need to show them a path forward, and right now, that's missing. For many attendees at the CBI conference, the budget represents a breaking point. One prominent CEO, speaking off the record, expressed deep frustration. "We're at the mercy of a government that doesn't understand business," he said. "Reeves talks about stability, but all I see is chaos. How can I commit to long-term investments when the rules keep changing?" Meanwhile, a separate controversy was unfolding that added to the overall sense of unease: the backlash against pro-assisted dying adverts in the London Underground. These billboards, part of a campaign to promote Kim Leadbeater MP's Right to Die bill, were met with immediate resistance. Critics dubbed the corridor of ads at Westminster Station the death tunnel, with palliative care experts and mental health advocates condemning the campaign as insensitive and potentially harmful. Professor Mark Taubert, a palliative care consultant, was one of the loudest voices against the ads. "In a place where suicides are not uncommon, plastering messages about assisted dying is grotesque," he said. His sentiments were echoed by Lewis Appleby, the government's suicide prevention advisor, who called the campaign seriously ill-advised. The situation took a bizarre turn when posters from the Samaritans, a suicide prevention charity, appeared to cover the ads just hours after they went up. Fleur Elizabeth, a commentator, shared an image on social media with the caption, "Well, that didn't take long. Love it." The Samaritans posters offered a stark contrast to the original adverts, featuring their helpline number and the message, "Whatever you're facing, we're here to listen." While it remains unclear who placed the Samaritans posters, the swift response has drawn praise from euthanasia critics like Yuan Yiju, a professor of international relations. "Thank you to whoever did this," he tweeted. Back at the CBI conference, the mood among business leaders grew darker as the day wore on. The combination of Reeves's contentious budget and the broader atmosphere of political uncertainty left many wondering if the UK was still a viable destination for investment. As one attendee put it, "We've gone from being a beacon of stability to a cautionary tale. The question now is, can Labour turn this around, or is the damage already done?" For Reeves, the road ahead looks treacherous. Her allies insist that she's the right leader to guide Britain through turbulent times, but her detractors argue that her policies are undermining the very foundations of economic recovery. One thing is certain: the battle for Britain's future has only just begun, and the stakes couldn't be higher.